I'm Kelda Yoon. Police say a nearly year-long investigation into a notorious Toronto street gang has culminated in dozens of arrests and more than 150 charges laid, significantly disrupting the operation of the Jamestown Crips. But as Chris Glover reports, some advocates and researchers say this won't solve the problem.
9 firearms, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, more than $500,000 worth of cocaine, and nearly $500,000 more of meth, all seized as part of a nearly year-long police investigation into a notorious Toronto street gang.
We decided to focus on a gang that's historically, well established in the Rexdale neighborhood. That neighborhood has experienced, a disproportionate amount of violent crime that's associated to gangs.
Police announcing 32 arrests and 158 charges, including possession, trafficking, and firearms offenses. Officers allege the accused concealed drugs in Canada Post packages heading out of province.
And obviously, lots of packages are going through Canada Post daily, hourly. So they were trying to conceal what they were doing. But our investigation revealed this, and so we worked with Canada Post to intercept packages before they got to St. John's.
From Newfoundland to Manitoba, police services in several cities helped, along with federal agents in Canada and the United States. Loud and proud and causing trouble for years, the Jamestown Crips have allegedly been behind extensive violence, from homicides to carjackings.
Our intention is to disrupt. I'm not going to be up here trying to pretend that the gang doesn't exist as of this morning. But the reality is, when you can take 9 guns off the street, just one gun can be used in dozens of shootings and claim innocent lives. And when you take drugs off the street, obviously there's people watching right now whose drugs have affected their family terribly. So I think anytime we have the ability to do that and disrupt a gang, I think that's good for the community.
For 5 decades, James Dubrow has been an author and researcher investigating organized crime. 32 arrests sounds like a lot. Do you think it'll have a big impact?
No, not really, not in the long term.
He echoes calls we've reported on for years from community advocates who keep saying policing is just catching the end, while preventing kids from joining gangs with things like education and employment is key.
So when you disrupt them, it creates uncertainty on the street. It also there'll be less drugs and guns for a little while, but not very long, because there's other groups, there are other organized crime groups that will fill the void. And there's certainly a lot of emerging ones as well. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 50 years. I've never seen so many organized crime gangs operating in Toronto and Montreal and all over the country. And operating with each other. They used to stay pretty much within their own city, but now they're going national and sometimes even international.
A lot of people believe that these arrests are solving the problem, but from our perspective and experience, we know this doesn't get to the root of the violence that we are seeing in Jamestown, Mount Olive, and the Rexdale communities.
So what do you think needs to be done to make sure that we actually tackle those root causes?
I think there needs to be an emphasis on preventative methods for young people, because we see offenders starting at ages of 10, 9 years old now in our community.
Investing, not just investigating, she says, catching kids before they ever wind up at a crime scene. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
It's been 6 days since a Markham realtor went missing under suspicious circumstances, and 2 days since investigators began focusing their search on a rural area in Whitchurch, Stouffville. But so far, nothing has been found to indicate her possible whereabouts. As the investigation continues, police are encouraging the public to share any information that could lead to finding the 56-year-old. Tyler Cheese has the latest.
She went missing last Friday now. We're almost a week later.
Police say it's unusual for Yuk Ying Moy, who also goes by Anita, to go so long without contacting her family.
That's completely out of character for her. Even just not speaking to family within the day is out of character. And that's why we were tipped off so quickly about the suspicious circumstances involving her disappearance. Our investigators have been working around the clock, piecing together a timeline and also a behavior her pattern of behavior to try to build some sort of idea of where she may be. We just simply don't know.
Moy, a 56-year-old realtor, was last seen at her home in the Baycliff and Warden area the morning of Friday, August 9th. She later spoke to family on the phone around 11 a.m., but hasn't been heard from since. Friday afternoon, her car, a 2024 white Mercedes-Benz SUV like this one, was found in the parking lot of a plaza near Finch and Warden Avenues. Earlier this week, search and rescue teams canvassed this rural property on Vandorf Side Road in Whitchurch, Stouffville. They say there's no evidence that Moy visited the site, but she was scheduled to the day she disappeared.
While we were there, we had our Marine unit, our Air 2, we had drones up, we had our K9 unit there, and then our search and rescue doing the ground search there. It's quite a large property. They did quite an extensive search. We are still holding that location, but our searchers are no longer there.
Investigators are still hoping local community members may have spotted Moy or her vehicle in the Finch and Warden area or near the property in Whitchurch, Stouffville. Anyone with information or dashcam footage in either of those locations is asked to contact police. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
The province has announced a new funding formula for its national $10 a day childcare program, set to take effect in the new year. The new structure will help daycare operators, many struggling to stay open, cover the true cost of providing care while reducing fees for parents. But some say it's not a fix-all. Nama Weingarten has the details.
Parents are getting a little closer to the $10 a day childcare they were promised, and daycare operators are set to see some relief with the cost of keeping their doors open. The new and much delayed funding formula announced Thursday is meant to cover the true costs of keeping childcare centers open.
We were essentially going into deficit each month just to keep our head above water. So I was excited, and I was actually pleased to see that Minister Smith and his government have taken our recommendations and our consultations seriously.
The current structure sees the government cover the amount of money parents were saving through the reduced fees. But operators say that replacing revenue based on fees that were frozen in 2022 doesn't cover what they actually spent. They're relieved the new structure addresses that.
We're really happy that it ensures ongoing funding to cover all of our costs in delivering childcare. It allows us to have a sustainable model and a predictable model for funding moving forward.
But some say the new formula is not a fix-all, as it doesn't come with a wage increase or a wage grid for early childhood educators.
We're not retaining enough of them in the sector, and we're not recruiting enough of them, and that's primarily because of low wages in childcare. And I don't see that this funding formula really changes that.
The starting wage for early childhood educators sits at $23.86 an hour.
It's inadequate to meet the cost of living. And it's also really inadequate relative to other professions that require similar levels of training, formal education, and ongoing professional development.
The new formula also includes a growth top-up to help new and existing operators create more spaces. There will also be a legacy top-up for childcare centers that face higher than average expenses, like ones that provide specialized kosher food or have to pay higher rent based on their location. And on top of covering costs, the formula will set an 8% profit for childcare operators, money that can be used to give their staff a raise. But this will apply to for-profit and non-profit daycares, which some have issue with.
If you're a for-profit operator, run by a private equity firm, that profit is going to go right back into your pockets.
In a statement to CBC, Education Minister Todd Smith says the formula was designed based on the extensive input of childcare operators that will provide stability and predictability that they need to continue expanding, and that their childcare workforce strategy provided a wage increase of more than 19% for early childhood educators. Now, if you have kids in daycare and you're wondering what this means for you, starting January 1st, the daily cost of daycare will be capped at $22, down from $23. Then in March of 2026, it's expected to be cut back further to that long-promised $10 a day 6 months later than originally pledged. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ford government is paying an American lobbying firm $1.3 million to promote the province's interests both before and after the upcoming U.S. election in November. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redekop explains why.
Premier Doug Ford has traveled to Washington to talk trade with top U.S. officials before, But now his government is trying a different move, hiring a Washington-based lobbying firm. The details, first reported by the Globe and Mail, are included in a filing to the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It's under the U.S. Department of Justice. The province will pay almost $55,000 a month to the company before and after November's U.S. election for a year, up to a maximum of just over $1.3 million.
I would also suggest that right now in the United States, their minds are elsewhere.
Ontario's NDP leader isn't convinced of the timing, as the Democrats and Republicans battle it out for votes. And she questions the use of taxpayer dollars.
Don't we have high-priced folks that they're already set up in some of these the big cities in the United States doing trade work apparently for us? Like, what are they doing?
Ontario's economic development minister defended the move.
The trade between Ontario and the U.S. is almost $500 billion annually. We are the U.S.'s third largest trading partner. It's Mexico, China, Ontario, not Canada, Ontario.
And he says this is also about the next trade deal between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico.
In 2026, the NAFTA 2.0, as I call it, agreement is up for review. We've got to make sure that we are at the table and fighting for the Ontario taxpayers.
When we form the next government.
In a statement, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie says trade is crucial, but that Ontarians should ask themselves if Ford's million-dollar lobbyists are a wise use of tax dollars.
Again and again, Donald Trump made decisions.
Premier Ford responded after Tim Walz became the Democrats' pick for vice president. He's the governor of Minnesota, which borders Ontario, and the two have met.
I was happy as punch to see the governor get nominated. It's all about building relationships. I'll work with anyone. I don't care, Republican, Democrat. I don't care who's in there.
Whoever does end up winning, those U.S. lobbyists will be making a pitch for Ford and his government. Lorenda Radicop, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. It's an end of summer tradition for many. The CNE opens to the public tomorrow. The annual event attracts tens of thousands of people to the city every year. But this year, road closures and construction might make getting to the X tricky. Greg Ross has more on how the city and organizers are planning to keep things moving.
The rides are all set up and ready to go. The CNE will open its doors in less than 24 hours for another season of fun and excitement. But in nearby Liberty Village, residents are bracing for an onslaught of traffic.
I suspect it's just going to be bumper to bumper for the next 3 weeks.
Complete and utter chaos.
Traffic's horrible. This is what it looked like in Liberty Village when the Honda Indy took over the CNE grounds last month. It was more of the same when the Caribbean Carnival was in town. It's expected to be bad again during the X.
There's going to be lots of cars. I mean, it's inevitable.
Construction and road closures in the area are causing a lot of the problem. Maintenance work on the Gardiner Expressway has forced lane reductions. Work on the King West streetcar tracks is still not complete. But CNE CEO Darryl Brown is hoping they can do a better job of keeping traffic moving during the X.
We think that we've got a plan that's going to work fairly smoothly for our event.
The CNE will have its own staff working directly with the city to monitor traffic all around the X grounds. In fact, they'll be using cameras just like these.
Right in the City Traffic Control Center. It's a matter of coordinating, looking what the traffic flows are, and they'll actually change the frequency of when a red light happens, when a green light happens to keep the flow going.
They will also have dozens of extra police officers directing traffic in the area. And for those who want to avoid the traffic but still want to come to the X, there is another option.
It's fantastic, to take the GO, to take the TTC, to take the streetcars, the buses, they all converge here, and it's an easy way to get here.
As an incentive, Metrolinx will be increasing train service along the Lakeshore East and West lines during the entire run of the CNE. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
It's a major milestone, the Big 5-0. The Toronto Zoo is celebrating its 50th anniversary today. Our Clara Pasica was there to check out all the festivities.
These penguins behind me are checking out these colorful boxes, and it looks like maybe they've heard the rumor that they're filled with fish. These birthday presents are all for the 50th birthday of the Toronto Zoo that's being celebrated today, and even the animals are in on the fun. Today's visitors are being greeted by just dozens of zoo staff in party hats, people in giant animal hats, stilt walkers, bubbles, music, and even some animals like the goat who greeted me in a party hat getting in on the fun. The zoo's CEO explains why the zoo is putting on such a big bash.
You know what, I think people take for granted their Toronto Zoo right here in the community. They have one of the best zoos in the world right here. The work that's going on with conservation science, with biobanking, with species reintroduction is phenomenal. And I think people forget that. They come for a great day with their family. They make memories that last a lifetime. They're also supporting conservation initiatives that are bigger than any of us at a time where we need more of them than ever.
For party animal visitors, there were animal talks throughout the day, giveaways, and more here at the Toronto Zoo. There were also some visitors from some VIP guests, including 2 of the original vets here at the Toronto Zoo that I had the chance to sit down with, who told me that there were many challenges in the early days, including a matter involving a giraffe.
First of all, there hadn't been very many giraffe that had ever been handled successfully back then. And we're able to get information, put together a team. We brought in a vet who was really good at orthopedic work, and we were able to sedate this giraffe and get it down and repair the mandible and then put a pin in and able to keep it going, and we saved it.
Well, the zoo had been accumulating an animal collection for a while before, and we still had a number of animals that had to be quarantined and examined and worked with before they could go on exhibit, and it was a real mad dash to get everything done before the opening day. It was exciting, and it was frustrating, and it was interesting as well, because at that time in the history of zoo medicine, we didn't have decent immobilizing drugs. We didn't have normal values for blood samples or almost anything else. I mean, it was a time when people were not regularly handling zoo animals in other zoos. So we had the opportunity to get that all started here, and it was really, really exciting.
The zoo opened as the Metropolitan Toronto Zoo in 1974, and it's welcomed some 60 million people since that time, many of them here visiting, carrying with them the nostalgia of all the zoo means to them. And speaking of nostalgia, the Ontario Science Centre is also partnering with the zoo today. They have a special exhibit, the chance to touch that giant silver ball representing static electricity. That is here, has been on hand all day. People have been taking that in. But speaking with people who work at the zoo, they say it's also about looking towards the future. The zoo has a huge $64 million expansion of a special center with a new habitat inside it, and it's also a partnership with University of Toronto Scarborough, and it gives the chance for students to study specimens in classrooms and labs and nurture the next generation. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. One of Britain's most well-known critters is in trouble, and a southwest London borough is putting up new road signs to protect them.
When a hedgehog gets frightened, it doesn't have a flight or fight response. What it does, it curls up into a ball. And obviously when a car's coming along, that's probably the worst thing.
Dedicated hedgehog crossing signs have been popping up in Kingston upon Thames. Now, it's a move to reduce the number of animals being killed on busy roads. Their prickly backs have always worked for hedgehogs to ward off predators, but they're no defense against an oncoming vehicle. In the UK, about 150,000 are reportedly killed on the roads each year. And Chris, we gotta save those hedgehogs. Look how cute they are.
They're adorable.
Aren't they?
Absolutely adorable, Kelda. Maybe a good pet. Yeah.
Ooh, I'd like one.
Well, I don't know where to get one,
Yeah.
but we'll research it after the show, Kelda.
Exactly.
We'll research it. And we'll start off actually in Western Canada. Obviously, the forest fires, the wildfires have been in the news. And unfortunately, they're just still burning. And with high pressure building in, it's basically trapping a lot of that smoke at ground level. So the poor air quality is fairly extensive. It basically covers all of the prairies right now. And although Our air quality is fine. Some of that smoke has migrated eastward into even Atlantic Canada, and it's not at the surface, it's above us, so it might make for a beautiful sunset again here across southern Ontario. Normal daytime high for this time of year is around 26. We peaked at 28 in the city of Toronto, 26 in Windsor, 30 in Ottawa, and it did feel at times like the low 30s, so it wasn't overly humid. In terms of the active weather situation, we do have a slow-moving system moving in. High pressure moves off, and that will allow this very slow-moving system to move in. Now, we're not talking about significant rainfall, continuous rainfall. It's going to come in waves, pulses, if you will. So it's not going to be a washout weekend ahead, but it certainly will be unsettled. The first wave tries to move in for the afternoon. It looks like it will hold just west of the downtown core of Toronto, and it does look more likely by the evening that we'll get into those bands of showers, maybe an isolated thunderstorm or two. Once we get into Saturday, more of the same. It looks like on and off showers. It's a slightly higher risk of thunderstorms, non-severe in nature, but they would produce some brief but heavier downpours locally. And through Saturday night and into Sunday, more of the same. We're still looking at the potential of on and off showers. That risk will fall off once we get into Monday morning. In terms of the overnight lows, fairly typical, around 17 in the city of Toronto, 21 in Windsor. Once we get into the afternoon, daytime highs near normal again, around 26. And it does look like Toronto will hold on to near normal temperatures into the weekend along with those showers. And it's not going to be overly humid as well. It's probably going to feel like the low 30s. Once we get into Monday, although an isolated shower can't be ruled out in the early morning, by the afternoon, even the late morning, we'll start to clear out that cloud cover as high pressure once again starts to return. And with that comes another run of sun. Tuesday, Wednesday, and possibly into next Tuesday, Wednesday, and possibly into next Thursday. But temperatures, Kelda, will be a little bit cooler with highs in the low 20s. So if you're not a fan of the heat next week, once we get through an unsettled weekend weather, it starts to improve nicely.
You know, I'm not a huge, I know, we said it before, right? We're not a huge fan of the heat, so this is perfect for us. Thank you so much.